Good afternoon, everyone. I join with Tony too in acknowledging the traditional owners of this land we're on today. And I note that back in 1978, in our experience, we were also closely linked to that of the First Nations here. And we did affirm that even from that time. The 78ers are all the revellers and protesters who took part in the events of June 24, June 26, July 15, August 27, 1978, and the Drop the Charges campaign that went over several months. Altogether, 178 people were arrested and many were injured. We 78ers are diverse. And we include many heterosexual people as well. For me, this call for a formal apology from the New South Wales Police began with the Mardi Gras season in 1998, 20 years ago now. It was a long road, with the highlights being the New South Wales Parliament's apology and the acknowledgement of us in February 2016, closely followed by the statement of then Superintendent Tony Crandall at the Mardi Gras parade media briefing, and the Fairfax media apology, which came on June 24 that year. But today, for me, and I think for many others here, this meeting with the New South Wales Police Commissioner is the most significant of all, because those repressive experiences and events that happened in 1978 were really driven by the New South Wales Police Command of those days. The homophobic policies and culture exhibited by the New South Wales Police in 78 cannot be fully put behind us until the leadership of the New South Wales Police formally acknowledges this by making a genuine apology to 78ers. This apology is essential for confirming the new policies and the culture of the New South Wales Police that have been developing for over 2 decades now, which value and respect the LGBTIQ community and now commit the New South Wales Police to work with our community. So there it is, there. I'm strongly of the view that there should be a statement in writing from the Commissioner that can be his record of what he said today, and that it should be public. This apology is also very important for LGBTIQ members of the New South Wales Police Force who share our broader struggle for equality and respect. It is also important for all the people of New South Wales to know that one part of the community will not be singled out for oppressive treatment, that we truly are all equal before the law. The people of New South Wales and beyond celebrate the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras each year, and they thank us 78ers for starting it off. In 2016, the New South Wales Parliament also thanked us for our contribution to making New South Wales a better place. And we want the New South Wales Police Force to be able to do the same. Thank us for what we have achieved. Commissioner Fuller, thank you very much for inviting us here today to the Sydney Police Centre. This is so valuable to us. I believe that as the current Commissioner of Police, only you can make this right by what you say and do in our presence here today. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Good afternoon, Assistant Commissioner. And good afternoon, senior police officers, the GLOs and the 78ers. And anyone else who wasn't a 78er who just happens to be amongst us today. Civil rights are our rights. Today is a landmark day in our history. 40 years, 46 days from the 24th of June 1978. It marked the beginning of that bleak winter of turmoil, incorporating the subsequent arrests in July and August. And in total, as Peter has already said, 178 arrests in the 2 months from the 24th of June to the 27th of August 1978. This is a civil rights issue for all members of our community, particularly for the 78ers and the many people who stood with us, of which there were many. This is not just about an apology. It is an assurance that these transgressions will never happen again. In 1978, undue force was common practice, and in some cases it extended to wrongful assault and arrest, as occurred on the night of the first Mardi Gras and ensuing demonstrations in 1978. I was a young university student who had gone to the parade that evening with a friend. After a fracas in College Street, a very determined group moved rapidly to the cross, and it's there we were confronted by dozens and dozens of police who had entrapped us at El Alamein Fountain and Darlinghurst Road. Without sufficient warning, with no time to disperse, the police stormed our group, creating total mayhem. What a cacophony. People were screaming as steel garbage bins flew across Darlinghurst Road. It really was an ambush. In 1978, extreme and excessive violence was the order of the day, as I said. Police were dragging people by their hair, punching and kicking, randomly grabbing us and throwing us into the old F100 paddy wagons. I was badly malhandled, that the sleeve was totally torn from my leather jacket. I had bruising across my chest, both arms, which was evidence for more than 6 weeks. This was tantamount to assault by police. And of course, at that time, police were minus their number identification. Yet I and others were charged, but the charges were subsequently dropped as a result of political action taken by us, the protesters and other associated groups and individuals. The Summary Offences Act was repealed in 1979. The assaults and wrongful arrests were not the only result of this police action. A number lost their jobs, their housing and relationships with family, damaged, in some cases irreparably, damaged or destroyed. The associated psychological impact on many participants was immense. As recently as 2 years ago, following the New South Wales parliamentary apology, some of us were again subjected to homophobic abuse. In my case, by close family members. These reactions jeopardised personal and family relationships. I'm glad we have stood firm in seeking a formal apology from the Police Commissioner, Commissioner Fuller. An apology from the New South Wales Police Force, most senior officer, is also a mark of respect. We ask now what steps are being taken, whether by policy or training, to ensure that this wrongful activity against gay groups and others will never ever happen again. Contrition is the mark of a strong organisation. The violence meted out will never ever leave my mind and that of many others. Yes, it was a riot and not ever to be repeated. For some, an apology may go some way to healing the hurt. To others, the pain endures. Commissioner Fuller, we require your assurance that the steps police are currently taking are sufficiently embedded within the workplace culture, that actions like those in 1978 will never be repeated. 2016 saw the New South Wales parliamentary apology, followed by the Sydney Morning Herald apology later that year. We are now calling on a formal apology by you as Commissioner of the New South Wales Police Force. This would complete the trilogy of apologies to the events in 1978, from the 24th of June to the 27th of August. Civil rights are our rights and a mark of a civil society. Thank you.
I also acknowledge the traditional owners, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The events of 1978 were life-changing for many of us. For me, I was 19. I lived in a share house in Newtown. Life was okay. I was not out to my family nor to my colleagues. I wasn't an activist. I had attended one International Women's Day march and the Save the Whale march. Remember them? Then I went to the first Mardi Gras. My expectation was fun. Reality was completely different. I was arrested for laughing while I watched a police officer try to catch a young gay man as he danced and ran off. Maybe my laughter was too loud, maybe a touch hysterical. The police officer said, "If I can't have him, I'm going to have you." And I was arrested for laughing, but really it was because I was gay, because I was a lesbian, I was a dyke. There was nothing courageous about my arrest. The officer grabbed my arm and my friends grabbed the other arm. Eventually into the paddy wagon I went. The following Monday morning we had to make an appearance at court, Liverpool Street Courthouse. So for me that meant I had to ring work because I wasn't attending. So I phoned my employer and I told them I'd been arrested in error. It was a mistake. Within 48 hours, I was outed to my family and to my colleagues, and no one received that favourably. When I returned to work on Tuesday, the physical harassment and intimidation commenced. The other women told me I wasn't to use their bathroom, or they leave the tea room when I entered it. The men started jostling me on the stairs or elsewhere in the office, causing me to drop my work and get it out of order. Filthy leso was frequently said to me during this time. The intimidation was public, no one concealed their newfound contempt for me, and I was completely alone in that environment. In the following months, I was subjected to increased homophobic behaviour in the workplace, my workplace. So I eventually resigned from my job. I didn't have family support, I had very little money, so I became a couch surfer for some time, well before the term couch surfer was even considered. Fast forward, it's now 40 years later, and we are close to a formal police apology from the Commissioner Fuller. I wonder what an apology will look like, and I wonder what an apology will mean to me. Honestly, I'm not sure. I think an apology from the Police Commissioner, the most senior police officer in New South Wales, is a long time coming. And I applaud Commissioner Fuller and the Assistant Commissioner Tony Crandell for working with us to make this happen. Apologies are important. This apology will put on record the harm and distress caused by the events of 1978. I'm hopeful the apology will be sincere and heartfelt. I think it will be. But I'm concerned it might be perceived as a blue wash, and I wonder how much difference it will make to our lives. I want an apology that does make a positive difference. I think the Glow's work is fantastic, and I acknowledge the work Tony Crandell and his team has done in Lismore, Sydney and Parramatta. Now Tony has Liverpool in his sights. Why? Because Bankstown and southwestern Sydney had the highest no vote in the recent plebiscite, so thank you, Tony. I accept that modern policing is trying to weed out homophobic behaviour, but what happens when a young gay person in Wilcannia or Burke wants to make a complaint about a hate crime and they are confronted with homophobic officers? Obviously the Glows can't be everywhere. This apology from the Police Commissioner should send the strongest message to the entire police force. Recently, this is a little bit personal, I was exposed to homophobic behaviour in a social setting, a barbecue at a friend's house. This woman yelled at me and banged the furniture I was sitting on. "You deserve to be arrested. You're breaking the law. You deserved everything you got." Nothing I said could cut through her anger. The charges were dropped. There was no case to answer. I gave her examples of the injuries sustained by 78ers. It did not matter what I said. Her levels of aggression escalated and no one challenged her, except for me. Eventually, Karen, my friend, returned and threw some wood on the fire pit, and I don't know how she did it, but she changed the conversation to the topic of immigration. Well, that was interesting because that subject then got even uglier. But what was interesting about this, and humour me as I tell the rest of the story, was that her friends were unwilling to support a racist rant, but they were happy to be silent about homophobia. That woman yelling at me, she was gay. She was also a sergeant in the New South Wales Police Force. I hear she's retiring soon. I applaud that. Officers like her undo the good work of Tony and his team and Mick's leadership. Commissioner Fuller's leadership. I want to live in a world that doesn't support racist rants or rants against any minority, because the ugliest side of those rants is violence, and violence damages lives. And as police officers, you know that violence is criminal. We know the queer community is subjected to a high level of violence, unsafe behaviour, and our youth is vulnerable. We know there is fear of reporting crime to the police, and that exacerbates being vulnerable and gives power to the perpetrators. No one in this room wants that. So in terms of the events of 1978, 40 years later, and what does an apology mean to me, or what could it be, I wonder if maybe the police and our community could work together to lobby the New South Wales government to implement a Safe Schools program. Yes. Together, the queers and the cops, we could interrupt undesirable behaviours before they become entrenched patterns of violence. Can you imagine it? Making something like that happen? Your power and our tenacity. If we can work together on something like that, it could make it safer for queer youth, and it's something I'd like to be a part of. It might take a while, but we as a community, we are resilient. We don't give up, even if something important takes a while, like an apology. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. My name is Gay Egg. I'm standing up here with Mark Gillespie. To start with, I also want to, for the 78ers, acknowledge that we are standing on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who never ceded sovereignty. I also want to acknowledge any Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging in the room, and to acknowledge the Indigenous 78ers who were there on the night, at least 3 of whom were stolen generation and 1 from the hidden generation. And the Indigenous people there, especially the group of Bundjalung people who came to our aid when the police moved in to attack people and everyone linked arms. One of the chants was "Stop police attacks on gays, women and blacks." And the Bundjalung people who were there that night heard that and came to our aid. So we don't have their names, but we know of them. I also want to acknowledge we are often portrayed, the 78ers, as a group of middle-class white people, usually the only ones who are interviewed by the press in this country. So I want to acknowledge our diversity, that we crossed all class lines. In terms of sexuality, we were gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, probably pansexual, and we had many heterosexual allies with us. In terms of our cultural backgrounds, we were extremely diverse, as is the population of this country. If you read through this, the back of this, which has a list of about 320 names, you will see that we were Indigenous, we were Maori, we were Palestinian, Lebanese, we were Jewish, we were Greek, Maltese, Indian, from various Asian countries. We were Irish, we were German, Dutch, Sicilian, English. Like, there are so many cultures in here. I also want to tell you that we have had messages of support from around the country and overseas. From West Australian, 178 has said, "We shone a light in 78 and we're still shining those lights." From Aotearoa, New Zealand, 178 says, "Kia kaha, kia toa, kia manawanui," which translated means be brave, be strong, be persevering. From Andrew Betheris, who is first cousin of Peter Trebilco, who died last year, he says, "You were very brave then and you're very brave today. Good on you." From a 78 in Canberra, "I hope it all goes well, truly, really well." She was one of the 3 women who were badly concussed on the night, and still wants to remain anonymous today. We would also like to acknowledge all the 78ers around Australia, New Zealand and indeed the globe who could not be here for this apology. An apology that was 40 years in the waiting and 20 years in the making. And finally, we would like to acknowledge and pay respect to all those 78ers who have since died, who we hold dear to us and who stand with us in spirit today. So I will read the list of women, 78ers. These are the ones that we know of who have died and who never lived to see this day and to receive this apology. Chris Burke, Marie-Therese Brown, Frances Phoenix, Heather Gray, Kate Latter, Wendy Martin, Margaret McMahon, Joyce Stevens, Penny Stewart, Liz Whitby, Irene Doubtney, Jenny Lyons, Mary Dimmick, Carolyn King, Suzanne Keys and Helen Paisley.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to read the names of several men who have since passed without any apology for the violence that police meted out during those months of 1978. I acknowledge we're on Aboriginal land, but I'd also like to acknowledge and to point out that this fortress of a police headquarters lies on the boundary between Surry Hills and Darlinghurst. Why is this such a concentrated area of LGBTIQ communities? If you have a look at the statistics, you'll find it is. The police headquarters is bang in the middle of gay areas of Sydney. Why? Because over so many decades, men like me who grew up in rural areas, country areas, sought safety where we could find it, where we could find others like ourselves to live together. Did we find it with the New South Wales Police Service, with the Taylor Square Police Station, which still stands? No, we didn't. The uniform of the New South Wales Police represented for me and for so many others, and I'll read the names in a moment of a few of those who are not with us. That uniform represented the violence that the community as a whole meted out upon us. And even to this day, I know that many of you here, like me, are the 78ers. I find it very hard to even to look at the uniform, particularly when there's a mass of police together. So I'm going to read the names now, but this is not an exhaustive list. Gay Egg, a few years ago at the Fair Day, put up a whiteboard, and the response from community members has been tremendous, of people adding names of 78ers who've passed away. Here are some who didn't live to see what we hope will be an apology today. I'll read them. Terry Bell, Peter Blasey, Bruce Belcher, Peter Bonsall Boone, Jonathan Byrne, Doris Fish, Dennis Freeney, Anthony Galbraith, Lance Gowan, Eddie Hackenberg, Ian Harris, Jeff Hill, Richard Maxted, Brian McGarn, Gary Nichols, Ron Owen, John Pierce, Gary Pye, Bernard Rourke, Dave Sargent, Sasha Soderto, Stephen Stewart Sinclair, Mark Tapsell, John Terry, Peter Trabulko, Peter Tully, Jim Walker, Richard Wilson, Paul Young, John Eucalis, Lee Holloway, Honey, and Angel.